And we are live on Facebook and YouTube. I have the absolute pleasure of having my friend Lisa on again. It's been how many years since you were on last?
I don't think we dealt with the COVID bullshit the last time I was on live with you.
That's what I was thinking too. So that would
Yeah, it's
be
been a little bit.
2 years, probably at least.
Yeah.
And my whole thing was we had just had Jupiter be
Yeah.
born right as the COVID thing all hit. And
Right.
you know what it's like when you've got small kids. There's pretty much nothing else happening other than making sure that they're up and breathing properly and,
Yeah,
walking
absolutely. Just
stuff.
keeping
No,
babies
that's
fed and alive.
exactly that is all that we did for a very long time. I'm very, very happy to have you back on the show though. And this No, we just decided, fuck, I just wanted to have you on live. But one live that happened recently, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was talking about how trying to like fight against the flow in order to heal or in order to do self work, and I'm gonna find my shadows. I'm gonna fight them. I was saying that we have to be careful not to go too crazy on it, and you mentioned that there's a natural timing that astrology will take when it comes to healing shadows, where we don't have to go and try and find them. If we actually just
Yeah,
pay
that's right.
attention to what's going on during certain periods, those things will come up astrologically in order to be processed and dealt with. And then the refractory period of integration. And the idea is that that happens of itself, so not something that we have to try and create.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I became an astrology uh kind of passionate type of person about astrology because um I was trying to find ways to get to know myself a little better, try to work on my own stuff. And so it became something that I use for myself, and I also try to, when I'm doing, chart interpretations for others, I try to incorporate some of that for them as well.
Yeah, beautiful. I remember when I said it on the live, I was like, so if we can find a good timing and we can do a good pace, and you were like, yeah, but astrology. I was like, oh, why am I trying to find anything? It's already here. We don't have to be the creators of any of it. It already is. We've got
Because,
Grant on saying, yo, 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 what's up, brother?
hey, Grant.
Grant is going to be in your position next week, and we're going to have a
Yeah,
chat then. Yeah.
love that.
So
Love saying no
look
to
at
a
this
no.
look at the StreamYard situation. How good is it to be able to click on it and have the comment come up on the stream?
Oh my gosh,
Um,
that's fantastic.
and I always put this up here when you come in, shoot a hello. That keeps the energy going.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's been really nice using a different program. I feel like we all got pushed into the Zoom situation because it was just
Oh, absolutely.
the best one at the time when everything went to shit. But we have to remember that that's just one of the options. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to be under Zoom's tyranny anymore. I'm over onto a different.
Tyranny
uh,
under others. Yes.
exactly. How you doing? How you doing, Granter? How's your experience of the astrology of our, let's say, last 2 months been? I would love to hear. Yeah. But anyways, it's been really fun fucking around with different programs, and
Yeah.
for a long time actually, you probably wouldn't know this because not a lot of people do, but me and Grant, and another friend called Greg were trying to start up a streaming type business, and we were going to do things like
You,
have it so people could donate to people's streams and stuff. Now the joke is this was
I
2015.
actually remember this because
You do?
I'd actually signed up briefly, and then I was like, wait a second, isn't this what Josh is already live streaming live?
Yeah, it's a funny situation because we put time and money and all sorts of things into that project, and then
Right.
what I'm finding now on Facebook, I have something called stars,
Yes.
um, that people can pay me. So it is kind of like it is a funny situation because what we were visioning ended up happening anyway,
Right.
but not through our means. But I guess that's the way she goes.
Yeah.
Uh, Granter comes up to say, "I've been so out of tap with it this summer, just rolling in the current, but feeling much more tapped in and tuned in now." That's
Oh,
awesome,
that's
bro.
amazing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, you know what? I think there was something that shifted for a lot of people. Just not too many days ago, just on the I guess November 8th. I think it was. I just have to look at my calendar again. Yeah, on November the 8th, we had a lunar eclipse. And
Yes.
for once, Nova Scotia actually had like amazing pictures of it. It wasn't covered by cloud. Um, and so yeah, so we just had this eclipse, and it was along the so if you were to look at like the zodiac wheel, it was along the axis of Scorpio and Taurus. And so Taurus is sort of this sign that's about riches, indulgence, security, all of those things. And then you have Scorpio that's sort of like a mirror of that, but sort of applying it in a more emotional way. So it gets into depths of things like our sexuality, our understanding of pleasure, our um, desire to get to know ourselves in a really deep way. And so the eclipse happened along that axis. So I think it opened up stuff for a lot of people, whether they were, uh, necessarily really paying attention to it or not.
Yeah, I would say so. And
Yeah.
oftentimes, like, what causes all the friction? Just because it does seem like Scorpio. Again, we talk about pleasure, we're talking about desires, we're talking about
Oh
sexuality,
man.
but gee, there's a lot of
I think you could probably write a thesis on why people have a problem with the Scorpio sign. I mean, I have a Scorpio sun sign, so I am a little biased about this, but I do think that societally we really have a problem that we need to work on with being okay with people taking their pleasure.
Yes, and I agree with this. Why does it turn out that there's like quite a lot of anger vibes that tend to pop
Yeah,
around during
oh man, like there's so much Scorpio hate, and it's I mean, to be fair, some of it is earned. A fixed water sign. I mean, fixed signs generally are a little harder to deal with.
I'm
Um,
an Aquarius, and I agree.
yeah, and it's like it's the fixed nature of the sign. Um, it's the sign that's in the middle of the seasons, so it's really entrenched in being the thing that it is. Um, and
Yeah,
so,
but here's a joke. I'm in Australia and we're just moving from spring into summer. But
right,
I swear to fuck all the same things happen. I'm sorry to say this so brashly, but there's a lot of self-harm.
yeah,
Like there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of things that come up at this time, but we're in springtime here, so it makes
right,
sense and can't like oh things are dying and everything, but here it's like
yes,
things are being reborn and also fuck, look at all this drama and look at all this pain. Like, whew, it's cray cray. So I get it in the
yeah,
other hemisphere, but sometimes
yeah.
I wonder. Grant says he's an Aries, and I disagree. The truth is, Aries is a
It
cardinal
is.
sign, isn't
That's
it?
right.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
classic.
So Aries is cardinal signs start a season. They're instigators. They're the beginners of things. They're really good at sort of getting projects off the ground.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I've noticed that. Capricorn is the one for Earth, correct?
Yeah.
And
Right.
um, Cancer for water.
Yeah.
And wait for it. And what was the other one? Oh shit! I got Earth,
What are you missing?
fire, water, air. So
Yeah.
Gemini.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, cool. That's
There
funny.
you
I
go.
actually went through a thing where I'm pretty good at remembering the cardinal, mutable, and
Yeah.
fixed because fixed of each ones. Come on, Leo,
Yeah.
Scorpio, Taurus,
Yeah.
Aquarius, like fixed as fuck,
It's
man.
like
Every
it's
time you meet
all
some,
the extra people.
it is all the extra people. And then mutable, which means
Yeah.
flexible, we're talking Pisces. We're
Yeah.
talking Libra. We're
Yeah.
talking, it's like it's what are the other two? Just one second. I'll actually do it. Sagittarius.
Yeah.
Sagittarius, like that's the most like funnest of all the
Yeah.
fire signs. So it is a funny, and then the last one would be on Earth Virgo. So
Yeah.
it's like if you actually even just think of those signs and how they appear in the mutable,
Yeah.
cardinal, or fixed position, fuck,
Yeah.
it makes sense. Like I don't
Yeah.
even find it's easy. If I forget them all, I'm just like, okay, what are the easiest, nicest signs? I'm like, cool, those are the mutables. What are the extra like intense and dramatic? Oh, that's the fix. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
and what are the fucking go-getters?
Yeah.
That's cardinal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty accurate. And yeah, it's funny how that works, right? Like I think that's why I love astrology so much. It's kind of like a really useful roadmap or reality map that kind of gives you a bit of an insight into people, into the world. Like it's just it can be really useful.
Absolutely. And Jody comes up to say, Scorpio is water as well. They acting crazy right now. Well, the truth is, again, that's the Scorpio hate that Lisa was
Yeah.
talking
See,
about
that's the
before.
Scorpio hate. I'm not acting too crazy. I just had a really good eclipse.
Did you see that meme that was like, when Scorpios are like, it's Scorpio season, and then all the other signs, and it shows everybody like,
Hiding away. Yeah. Doing the like the Homer Simpson hiding into the wall thing. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's a funny time though, but like I do, as Halloween approaches, and I understand this is the time when the veil is the thinnest as well.
Yeah.
I actually do have my guard up really strongly now around
Yeah.
October, and it lasts until about Sagittarius season.
Really?
So
That's really
the
interesting. Let's
last two
let's
weeks,
get into that.
yeah, let's do it. The last 2 weeks of Libra. I mean, again, I'm just going to say this really brashly. We had
Yeah.
3 friends commit suicide all in the same
Shit.
time, 2 years ago now,
Yeah.
all between that time period, and I just have noticed that the chances for shit to go awry seem a lot
Yeah.
higher during that
Yeah.
1 month to 1.5 month period. And I'm just, yeah, I don't know.
So I wonder if have you noticed any um similar mirroring um in like the Beltane season?
Which is, could you give me a
So
month?
like 1st of May would be the sort of traditional day that Beltane is celebrated, but if you were to use like the exact zodiac date for it, it's usually between May 3rd and 7th.
So that's the change of the seasons, basically 6 months apart, right? You
Yeah,
know,
and
my
so
my
Samhain has
homework,
that like Samhain has that veil thinning piece to it, right? And as its mirror, so this is that Scorpio Taurus axis again. Um, the Beltane season also can have those same kind of echoes.
I wonder sometimes if I've just brought the weather here to Australia because I feel like again, um, that to me in Canada, of course, is spring and it's exciting and
Yeah.
everything's going crazy and everyone's sleeping with each other. It's kind of like that fun time. But here, that's actually the trek into winter, right?
Right.
So my homework is long-term homework, and I'm going to study that around May of next year. I'm going to really pay attention because it could just be my cognitive bias because I'm
Mm.
so used to that being the thing,
Yeah.
but also
Yes. Yeah.
me and Lily again are a little more careful around each other during
Yeah.
that time too. Like it's like, oh shit, everybody get on high alert.
Yeah.
Uh,
For sure. I mean, there is some truth to that. I mean, certainly in the northern hemisphere this time of year we're really heading into like what I would call like the tides of death and the tides of darkness, and so once you're past the winter solstice the tides of life and light start to sort of grow again up to the point of the summer solstice, and then they start to wane. um, and so
which
we're
is again funny because in the southern hemisphere, it
yeah, that's
really is
split.
like every day the sun gets brighter and shit, and I'm just like, God damn it, I can't listen to any of these spiritual teachings because they're all based in the northern hemisphere, fuck. The
Yeah.
druids are speaking hard, but yeah, it's a really, I like that though because again I am a fan of dissecting dualistic
Yes.
experiences and finding
Yeah.
ways to bring them into some sort of balance. So it is
Yeah.
interesting having two homes on different parts of the planet that are doing the exact opposite. And again, because the world is, what do you I know that there's Eurocentric
Yeah.
as a negative, but I suppose northern hemisphere centric. Could that be? Is
Yeah,
that
for
like a
sure. I mean I mean astrology is very much Eurocentric in its
yeah,
base, right? I mean it works off of Greenwich Mean Time. I mean the time zone system, like all of that is very Eurocentric, right? So, yeah,
yeah. Um,
somebody somewhere decided this is the most important spot in the world and we're going to put a pin here.
They
And
just didn't
this
know
is,
Australia really existed then properly, you
yeah,
know? Like it was
yeah,
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 yeah. It's interesting. It is interesting, the hemisphere situation. And yeah, and actually this is something that that me and Lily talk about quite a bit is it's very interesting to be able to have frameworks and have beliefs and have perceptual routines and then interrupt them on purpose.
yeah,
Even if that just means letting go of my beliefs, even if it's just for like 10 minutes, like, oh, I don't know
mhm,
nothing, just for 10 minutes and then
yeah.
coming back to it. It's a pretty powerful practice.
It
And
is, yeah,
if we are to take the historical origins of pretty much everything we do, they are based in somebody else's perception at some
yeah,
point, you know. Like,
yeah,
and
for sure.
so yeah, it's interesting fucking with that.
Yeah, well, and I mean, we have a choice, I think, in a way that like our parents and our grandparents didn't. We have a choice that we can, examine our beliefs in a way that leaves them open for us for growth. We didn't, grow up like I didn't grow up with a household where parents could do that, you know. That wasn't the focus or the zeitgeist at the time. And now I think things have shifted enough um in the world that, we're really lucky and that we can really examine that and fuck like our kids are going to just they won't even have to be like, oh wait, I've got to sit and examine that. They're already gonna be like, none of this
Really,
makes sense. I'm gonna figure this out for myself.
really hope so. Yeah, that would be a beautiful evolution, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I have noticed that as well, and I do yeah, feel like we are in an incredibly lucky time, because back in the day, I believe we were so stuck in survival mode too that it was
Yeah.
really hard to have the space even to just have that wiggle room. It's just like
Yeah.
you look, grandpappy's a locksmith, and you're gonna be a locksmith, and you better
Yeah.
fucking look right now because if you don't, we're not gonna be able to eat. You know, like it'd just be like, fuck,
Right.
I'm a locksmith.
Yeah. Yeah,
Here's my locksmith.
absolutely.
I'm making keys. You
Yeah.
know, like.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no room for changing what you were. Um, and then following those generations, it was like, well, then we had fucking war, like in huge ways. And so you've got, two generations of collective drama from war,
Yeah,
and
100%.
in a lot of ways, like, people who are in our age group, so like the elder millennials, um, our parents grew up in those households, right? And so that has an impact that we have to make the choice to limit in our own lives.
I do not want to get into these huge negative spirals. I'm very optimistic about the future. I feel
Yeah.
like again, even astrologically, it feels like the air, like the cosmic waves have opened. It's so
Yes.
much easier to have perspective. I do have a thought though, and again, please, this isn't me manifesting fuck all. Just being trying to be realistic. You
Yeah.
know, war could break out in a new way sometime in the
Yes.
next 50 years, let's say. And I hope
Yep.
that's not what happens. I hope that we have the empathy and understanding and perception and perspective now of for all this, lest we fucking forget,
Yeah.
lest we forget we're not trying to fight wars anymore. You know, like
Yeah.
ultimately
Yeah,
that's what
that's
that
right.
whole movement is towards. But it is interesting because if we did find ourselves in, and this kind of happened with the coronavirus, to be honest, when
Yeah.
people start to get back into survival mode, it is amazing how static and how solid and how almost 2D things can become.
Yes.
So I just want to
And it
keep that in
happens
heart.
very quickly, right? And I mean, that's another opportunity for us to like be very wary of that happening and doing everything we kind of can to prevent it in the future.
Very
I mean,
much.
I think about the number of people, myself included, who, have had massive conflicts with family members, friends, and have in some cases, I hope it's not irreparable, but I think in some cases there's been irreparable damage. And I've seen so many people talk about um, just the loss of closeness with people who they really valued before COVID.
Oh
And
God, you mean just
that really breaks my heart. Um, we've got very little time on this earth. Very little time, really. If you're lucky, you get 100 years. If you're lucky.
Mhm.
And if you're really lucky, you're healthy that whole time.
Yeah, exactly. And
Right.
so to take the last 3 years
So
and
to fucking
even the next thirty
squander it,
years, uh,
to
oh,
squander it because of keyboard fight is
what is
just
your
tragic.
there, there is obviously, again, I stand pretty strongly in the middle between mainstream and
Yeah.
conspiratorial viewpoints, just because I
Yeah.
do think there's truth in both. I
Yes.
think that the more the conspiratorial stuff is ungrounded, the
Yeah.
further into fantasy it gets, the more it's not based in anything tangible. I
Yeah.
also think that the mainstream, because it is based on values that don't even really exist anymore,
Right.
has and big money, what do you call it, influence,
Yes.
that I feel like both sides, if unfettered, can become a problem.
Yeah.
And but I guess what I'm trying to say, sorry, I just
No, that's
completely
okay.
fucked
Peace.
out there, is there is a theory that there is some intentionality, I guess you could say, about having people be in that survival mode and fighting through
Yes.
that process. Do you what's your thoughts on all of that?
Um, well, I
Hmm.
mean, I think that so like full disclosure, like I'm a registered nurse to the viewers that are watching this. So I tend to, have a practice that has a lot of science and health sort of tied into it, but I don't see Western medicine as the only answer. I don't think Josh and I would be talking right now if I did.
Yeah, but and at the same time, I think Western medicine's rad as fuck, because when I had
Yeah,
Sam from India,
right.
I
Yeah,
would have
like
died.
thank
We
fucking
wouldn't be having
Western
this
medicine.
conversation exactly if we didn't have
Yeah,
antibiotics. I would have died. So
right.
I'm not like one of those mainstream haters either.
No,
Um,
no. Okay, so what was I gonna say? Fuck.
I was asking about the intentionality, just that.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. Here's the thing. I think that from both sort of what Western medicine would call like the alternative medicines, the more natural healing processes, and from Western medicine itself, I think both sides have uh, an intentionality to keeping us in certain perspectives. Western medicine uh, has a lot of benefit to, allowing unfettered sugar use, allowing, just like unstoppable deforestation. Western medicine gets a lot out of us being sick, right?
Yeah.
And on the other side of that, New Age medicine is also going to get a lot from that too,
Hmm.
because then we're
And I
turning
know
other shit too to try
I know. I
to heal
remember one
ourselves.
person
You know
said,
what I mean?
don't go to the dentist, even if you've got rotting teeth, because if you go to the dentist, it'll somehow do something. I'm like, no, 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 go to the dentist. Like, we have to find a way. We can have alternative beliefs, but also have like rational and reasonable, balanced thought in terms of
Yeah,
maybe.
right. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's to me, it's a yes and scenario. Like I have blood pressure issues. I'm going to take the blood pressure pills that I need to take, but I'm also going to do some other stuff because I know that some of the contributors to my blood pressure are, stress and anxiety. And so I'm going to do some healing work that I can do and breathing and meditation and all of those things as part of my work to keep myself well.
The same thing for me in terms I have indigestion
Yeah.
issues, and obviously what I eat makes a huge difference to that.
Yeah.
So I try to be very careful. However, if things do slip over into the acidic, I do take a little pill, and it works very, very well for me. So I
Right.
guess the question from before was more, do you have a sense that there is intentionality in having us have fought so hard, and having, again, families have been split and all this shit? Like, do you think that that was an intentional thing, or do you think that's just the byproduct of our human silliness in times of stress?
Well, I think it is a stress response for sure. I mean, there's a lot of times throughout history where I think it's not necessarily intentional, but there's a beneficial byproduct for,
Sure,
corporations from divisiveness.
sure,
I don't necessarily think that it is intentional for, um, these like worldwide pandemics to have caused all of this strife, amongst family members and friends and whatnot. But I do
Mm.
think that there's um, that benefit, that kickback to them. That it's one of those things that's like they didn't necessarily intend it, but maybe it was a nice kickback.
Uh, some spam come up. Oh, it's over YouTube, for God's sakes.
What?
Block you. I just saw some spam come up for the first time. It says xxx18.online, and it was like, come click this link, but that was just in the comments here. Jeez.
What the hell?
Anyway, yeah, it's okay. I just blocked them. Yeah, so in times of stress, though, we are notoriously ready to be divisive, and that
Yeah.
absolutely can be capitalized on.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I guess the thing that is hard is I have seen a lot of beautiful people fighting and still holding on to the strong, either anti or
Yeah.
not anti-vax position as well, and everything. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh my, it's like the further we get into those divisions and the
Yeah.
further away our perspectives become, yeah, it just doesn't seem to be beneficial in terms of us coming together and
No, that's right.
ironically, like creating the grassroots movements that would be
Yeah.
helpful to overcome a lot of the power structures in the world as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, for sure.
Get a little suspicious, just a little tiny suspicious on that sometimes. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, hmm.
Yeah. I get
but
that. Because and I
I
think that's
also,
where like that's where like uh a good conspiracy theory will start, is by pulling on those suspicions that we have. Um and I think sometimes, humans are really good at like trying to see patterns and stuff. I mean, that's why like Jesus is on toast all the time, right? Um, he's not actually there, but like it's easy to find patterns. And so it's easy for our brain to make a connection to uh, seeing the divisiveness as an intentional thing when it may not be. Do you know what I'm
no.
saying? Um, and so when that's happening, it's easy for a conspiracy theorist to go, I see that pattern too, and I can capitalize on that.
So like maybe monetary and power, maybe
Yeah.
where the corporations will capitalize, but it could be
Yes.
that even intellectual capitalization could have
Absolutely.
an emotional capitalization as
Yeah.
well. I think it's important to remember that too. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's a very interesting time. I have noticed that the people that I trust the most have been very careful about not taking too crazy a side, and
Yeah.
have been able to speak to a center or to neutralize the argument as it comes up just by
Yeah.
being like, well, I actually don't know personally.
Yeah.
You know, like that's
Yeah.
I have noticed that, and you've seen a couple of exchanges that I've had to go through
Yeah.
where I wasn't such a fan of a bit of the bullying that was happening there,
Yeah.
and so kind of took a little bit of a stand here and there, but that was never a stand. I think it would have been great. And let me know again. I could be wrong. I've heard the opposites to this theory as well. But a part of me is like, I wish they just said, "We've made this antidote, and come
Yeah.
one, come all. This is for
Yeah.
anyone who wants it."
Yeah.
Just, I bet you that would have gone over a lot better.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I think, governments around the world tried all sorts of different strategies to get people to take part in various health practices to protect the public from the hand
There is
wash,
that.
masks, the vaccines, all the different types of um, treatments on a societal scale to treat the pandemic. Um, and I mean, Canada is a perfect example. I mean, Canada lied initially, right? I mean, and that's quite clear now where they said, you know, fabric masks are all that you need. That'll be fine. And they said that to people knowing full well that fabric wasn't sufficient to stop anything,
Yeah,
right? And so
yeah, and
I I
guess
guess
it's the an ends justifies the means kind of thing, right?
yes.
Where it's like,
Yeah. But I mean, I wonder if had they just said we have a
well,
mask shortage.
if
Whoop,
someone gets, it's okay to do.
well,
Oh,
something just happened there. Are you good?
sorry, I just had a I yeah, I had a phone call come in and almost completely fucked off the whole thing, but I think we're fine now.
Okay. Um, So yeah, no, I think it would be really interesting to see what would have happened if the, like Public Health of Canada had said, I I want you to have the right mask for you, but we're in a mask shortage and we need to prioritize people that are working in hospitals getting the
Or
highest quality mask first. I hope that you, as a citizen of our country, wanting to protect your fellow citizens, will understand that. Please do everything you can. And as soon as there are masks available, we're going to get them to you too. And I
yeah,
like, had there just been some fucking truth and honesty, I think a lot of people,
honesty and invitation is what I hear in your voice in that
yeah,
sentence. It's
you
an
know,
invitation. That's not necessarily like a fucking
and
strong arm. Yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, we don't need a paternalistic government necessarily for all things. I think there are some cases where that paternalism makes sense, in terms of like
Well,
the
as a
road and all of
society,
that. But
we still make immature decisions. And
yes,
so it is true that while people are making immature decisions, there's going to have to be that paternalistic thing that comes up sometimes.
yeah,
But
but
I
there's
don't know. I don't know if the whole society is going to be able to rest under the thumb of something like that for very long, though.
well, that's kind of the thing, right? And I think that's what the globe has really learned is that nobody's staying locked down for that long,
Yeah,
right?
fuck. It is.
Everybody's going to reach a limit.
Yeah, yeah, and that whole thing was very interesting as well. I remember feeling because again, I'm in Australia. We had a 1 month lockdown, and then we had like a whole year where it was almost like nothing was happening anymore, like
Right.
there was no virus. And then for 6 months we had a lockdown, and people went fucking crazy here.
Yeah, I
But the
bet.
truth, you guys in Canada had like 2.5 years straight, wasn't it?
Yep.
Like it was
Yep.
like so it's interesting because that's also the Australian spirit, right? There was
Yeah.
definitely a feeling of like, and you could tell when they did, I think it was a vaccine mandate for construction workers in Melbourne, they went fucking crazy. Like it was like full protest and like things
Oh
were getting
wow.
caught on fire. And they went, oh, never mind, and they just pulled back. But obviously in Canada we're a little more polite for
Yeah.
one, and yeah, yeah. Look, maybe we can step off this subject because it is so contentious. But thank you
Yeah,
so
for
much
sure.
again, as a person who works in medicine, also is an alternative practitioner. I want to thank you for even entertaining any of these topics,
Yeah,
because
I'm happy to talk about them, but yeah, we can totally step off of this and go into something else.
and I know that your perspective almost means more though because of having your foot in both worlds like that. So thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
What are we heading towards astrologically? I know that we're in a Mars retrograde right now, and that is going to, what I've heard was, um, like kind of similar to a Mercury retrograde, except maybe with less misunderstanding and more just straight fucking fire at each other. That there's a
That's
chance of
that's one
explosive
way to put it.
conversations,
Yeah.
and there's a chance of car crashes, I believe, too, or accidents. So like to be careful around
Yeah.
our
Yeah,
you
so
and
let's
moving.
let's talk about Mars retrogrades a little bit. So Mars retrogrades about every 2 years, and it's really fucking funny to me that the Mars retrograde always happens when the US is doing either a midterm or a full election. Like, that was a really fucking bad idea, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine a whole political system based on astrology, how much better that would go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, yeah. I mean, maybe somebody would have said, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should do it in those odd years that we're not dealing with a Mars retrograde."
Switch it up. Switch it
Yeah,
up.
let's do it in the odd years, not the even years, and maybe people will get along a little better.
Yeah, so here we are. We are in a Mars retrograde now for how many, like for
We are,
two and a half more months as well?
yeah, about 2.5 months. So January 2023 is when it will finish. Um, so Mars retrogrades, I really find them fascinating to kind of watch on like a societal level, global level, because we don't do a great job of understanding our anger personally, how to work through it, how to use it, um, and sort of put it into some kind of motion and catalyst to actually get something out of it. you know.
Hmm.
And so retrograde Mars, if we're not reflecting on why we're angry, can cause things like passive aggressiveness. It can lead to a lot of paranoia about, um, you know, fights or even like comments that are said. Mars retrograde will have somebody looking at this stream afterwards and being like, "Well, what the fuck did they mean by that? That was directed at me."
Everything becomes personalized, does it?
That's the Mars retrograde. It's very much, making something personal when it's really not about you.
All right, well, that's actually incredibly good to remember. Thank you. I'm going to have your voice
Yeah,
like an angel in the side of my mind as things go on. So that's perfect.
yeah. Mars retrogrades can be really useful. Retrogrades in general, I really like using. So the interesting thing with the Mars retrograde, where it doesn't happen that often, we don't actually get a lot of time from the planet Mars to do a good reflection on our anger issues, and that's societally like a bit of a problem. Um, but retrogrades are a good time to like review and reflect on the themes that come up based on where the planet is, right? So, I mean, after 2 years of the pandemic, it's kind of nice to have a retrograde a Mars retrograde that's in Gemini, the sign of communication, to maybe
Okay.
reflect on why we were angry the last 2 years.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
that's
it's
how you come
about,
together. You look at what planet is retrograding and you think about their themes. Okay. So Mars is about aggression, um, physical exertion. Mars was, or Aries was like the god of war, but also like the god of fitness, right? So it's about fitness and health and wellness along with anger. And so it's about using that anger
very
to catalyze
interesting.
something.
Okay.
And so then you have to apply that within the sign.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's very interesting. My friend Jody is an Aries, and she says Mars retro really affects me as I'm ruled by Mars.
Yeah,
Interestingly enough, my Mars is in Aries.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
also feel personally connected to such
yeah.
things, and my son
So
is an Aries too.
so the people that are going to end up sort of feeling it most this time around, Mars retrograde is going to affect people who have a rulership with Mars. So Scorpio, although that's the traditional ruler of Scorpio. So if you're sort of a more modern astrologist or astrologer, uh, you might see Pluto listed, but Mars is the traditional ruler of Scorpio and Aries.
Now,
Um,
Pluto's out though now, right?
Pluto's still in for
Oh,
astrology.
okay, okay.
We're
For
not
just for
throwing out Pluto. Astrology
okay,
will still astrology works with like asteroids and all kinds of crap. So like
okay.
yeah, astrology is gonna keep Pluto.
Okay. But
That
so
was
okay,
really
so
funny.
now, so now, so now, but now it used to be Mars exclusively,
Yeah,
and then it moved over into Pluto. Okay,
that's right. Yeah, so when Pluto was discovered, they felt that was the right fit for Scorpio as a rulership. But there's a lot of traditional astrologers who will use the traditional rulership only.
yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah,
I personally always associated Aries with Mars, just because
yeah,
it feels like that.
yeah.
That's the
So
go.
yeah, so Mars also rules Aries. It also and Scorpio, and right now the retrograde is through Gemini. So that's sort of your three signs that are going to be most impacted. Signs that are
Okay,
ruled by it, and people who've got Mars in their Gemini.
got it.
So if you
Yeah,
look at your birth chart and Mars is in Gemini, you're going to have an effect because Mars is returning to where it is in your own birth chart.
got it. Yeah. And but that again, this is really again this or the Mars retrograde is really about understanding our anger,
Yeah.
understanding and channeling it because you're talking about
Yes.
fitness, right?
Yeah.
Channeling that
Yeah.
anger into
Fitness.
something new and into something better.
I mean,
Yeah,
or like I'm sharing on my sweater, like putting it into something that needs to be fought, like a righteous
yeah,
anger as opposed to passive aggressiveness and keyboard warrioring and all of that
got it.
crap.
Got it. Can you because there's the straps are
Sorry.
are blocking it a little
Yeah,
bit. So
it says
we're on
proudly serving
injustice,
the
proudly
war on
serving. Yeah, fuck yeah,
justice. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, I got this shirt actually when I was in Alabama of all places. Not somewhere that I would think of like a war on injustice.
Okay.
But when I was in Alabama, life-changing trip, I went to a museum there called the Legacy Museum. Um, and it's part of something called the Equal Justice Initiative. And their museum is dedicated to telling the really difficult story of Black people who came to North America. So it starts
Hmm.
directly from the slave trade and walks you from the slave trade, like literally walks you through like a reproduction of like a section of ocean floor, um, to the stories of enslavement, to the stories
Hmm.
of incarceration, the Jim Crow laws, up to present day. Um, and so one of the things they had, as like a fundraising item was this sweater. So a
Well,
napkin.
and I suppose if that, and I know Alabama is an area where that stuff was particularly rife.
Yeah.
Maybe it's better that in places like that they're trying to make
Yeah.
retribution for their own karma
Yeah,
as
that's
well,
right.
right?
Yep. Yeah. So not the place where you think you would find the sweater, but it was really cool to get it there.
Absolutely. Where is, because here in Australia there are other movements happening that I'm a little more tapped into, but
Yeah.
obviously being in North America, I was very tapped into the indigenous and Afro kind of revolution that's
Yeah.
happening. Where's everything at with that?
um, that's a great question. I think there was probably a little bit of setback,
Or
because
just COVID?
of COVID. Um, but I mean, just locally, I'll talk, a little bit about Nova Scotia, since that's where we're both from. Um, there's some really wonderful things happening in my community. There's a second truck house in Nova Scotia. So there was one sort of protesting the Alton gas site. Uh,
And did it end up working? Was that what I heard? Is that
yeah,
they?
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Okay.
so Alton Gas did not proceed. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The second truck house that was put in place was on the Avon River in the Windsor area. And that was done because 50 years ago or so, that river was actually blocked and a causeway was put in. And
Hmm.
I can see what happened, you know, with the sort of connection and pattern making that I have, where I I saw the town start to die over the last 50 years, where like economies was really poor. There was a lot of various struggles happening in the area. And what's been interesting is over the last 2.5 years, fishermen and the indigenous group that had this treaty truck house going really did a lot of work to get the riverway opened up. And so they're rebuilding the highway, which is how this conversation started. The causeway will not be back. So the fake lake that was there, the blocking of the river will not happen again. Like that is now
And
reopened.
okay, perfect. And but
Yeah.
this is stopping them from reopening it?
Yeah. So the causeway was stopping them from reopening the river.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so now the river is being reopened. It's not at full capacity yet. They
Yeah.
Once the new bridge is put in though, that will that will open the way for the river to fully
Amazing.
flow. Um, and what's really interesting is like this started and suddenly there's a lot more businesses in downtown Windsor.
Mm,
Right? So there's more excitement happening. There's more activities happening in town. Um,
that's
and
good.
so
I'm happy to hear that.
I really
And again,
noticed like that connection to like water is now flowing through this area again that had become stagnant, right?
beautiful. And I mean, with the Alden gas, that was a battle that went on for over a decade, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really long fight.
And to come out winner, to know that that's possible, that's
Yeah.
that's got to be a great feeling. So yeah, fuck
Yeah, that's
yeah.
incredibly inspiring.
We have a funny situation here where there is lots of forest that is untouched and lots of
Okay.
forest that's being slated for development. And there's actually this like huge kerfuffle where like two different groups of indigenous people are fighting over the development of a land,
Right.
and the one group was given the legal rights to make the decision, but unfortunately are essentially selling out almost immediately.
Uh,
And then the other side are the other indigenous people that are actually saying, hey, you were given those legal rights, but we're saying do not fuck with our land, do not fuck with these sacred sites. And
right.
so it's very even more charged because it's actually
Yeah.
more indigenous to indigenous
Yeah.
happening over here, which is like, yeah, just it's crazy, man. The politics and the pain and the intensity
Yeah.
around the land rights in these different spaces. It's really, really cray
Mm,
cray. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, I think we've seen not so much I mean, I think there's sort of some conflicts that happen between various bands, but um we've definitely seen that out west in Canada where
Mm.
different indigenous groups have, purchased parts of a pipeline, for example, when other indigenous groups did not want it to happen. And I think our society, like our colonial bullshit, has really created this scenario where, like, the traditional ways that they might have resolved their shit aren't
Mhm.
happening because we've intervened and we've interfered and we've put our paternalistic thumb on their crap, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the theory here is in that same way is that they were kind of like trying to get people to fight by
Right.
giving certain people the money resources and other people without it. And then like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just it's cray 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 cray. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, that feels like I feel like oh, boo, that's a dead end thing. It's a bummer, you know. Like there's so much intensity and pain, and in
Mm,
Australia here, environmentalism is such a big topic
yeah.
right, but often even the Green Party are completely in bed with all of the different people, so they're selling
Right.
out everything from underneath people as well. It's like it's really fucking gross.
Yeah. Oh, that's so heartbreaking. And like we've got COP27 going on right now, and there's a lot of people who are, really upset about the fact that, like, there's something like 700 oil lobbyists or oil, coal, and gas lobbyists that are attending COP, right? So this is like the largest world forum on fucking fixing our planet, and there are more oil and gas and coal lobbyists at this meeting than what some nations brought with them.
That's fucked up. It's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, yeah, and also right now with the price of oil and gas being so high, I feel
Yeah.
like they've got like a stronger bargaining chip. And this is the thing that's happened in the past too. It's almost like, well, we could probably get those prices down.
Yeah.
Just have to, do this,
Yeah.
this, this, and
Yeah.
this. And
You
it's like,
scratch our back for us. Yeah.
yeah, it's a really hard time. I do feel hopeful that these things are not going to go on unconsciously forever. I
Yeah.
don't think that this is going to be a time where it's like, oh, everyone just gets away with all the stuff. It's like, no, I have a feeling
Yeah.
there's going to be some weapons actually, and
Yeah.
some
Well, kind of the thing.
facing
I
of
think
these
people are
things.
less likely to get away with it now. I mean, there was I felt a little bit of Schadenfreude this morning when I read an article from the CBC that talked about the tanking of crypto and Twitter. Um, and there was a little bit of pleasure for me in seeing
Yeah,
that, the ridiculous billionaire takeover isn't actually going so well. Um,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that's because people are aware and are waking up, and that's really fucking exciting.
Yeah, that's it. I think it's important to remember that the really, really bad, weird things, if they're then exposed, that's not a sign of a bad thing. That's actually a sign of a good thing because we can
Yeah,
actually see it unfolding and see the fall of the tower that was
yeah,
once standing tall.
yeah, for sure. Um, I don't know if you'd be interested, but I've been reading something that I think you might like, and I think some people on your live chat might enjoy too. So I want to big up a Canadian author. He's a druid and philosopher. He's actually there we go. This is a book called The Circle of Life is Broken. Um, and the subtitle is An Eco-Spiritual Philosophy on Climate Crisis. Uh,
Beautiful.
yeah, and so thankfully it is not a long book because I think that would be really heavy if it was huge. Um,
Yeah.
Brendan writes in a really hopeful manner generally, and so because of that, it's an easier read. Um,
Would you do me a favor and put a
sure.
link into the comments with
How
that book?
how do I do that while I'm on the phone?
Ooh, on the phone too. I'm thinking after the stream, it might be easier
I
to
can
use the laptop. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I can do
Um,
that afterwards.
yeah, and also links to any of your pages or anything that you'd like
Yeah.
to for your own work as well. Is there anything that you're doing personally coming up?
Yeah. Well, Evo just actually shared that the the books are coming out, so I can kind of announce it now. So I guess your live stream is the first place where I'm talking about it. Um, so I contributed to a book through Llewellyn, just like last month, called Scorpio Witch, and
Okay.
they're doing a whole series of sun sign witch books. So there's Gemini Witch and Libra Witch, and all of those are there. Um, and so I wrote an essay, like it's just an anthology of various essays from Scorpios in the Scorpio Witch book, from people who are Scorpio, who are witches. And so my section was fuck, what did I come up with for the title? Oh my god. It was really funny at the time, and so it was sort of a riff on, I don't know if you remember the movie that was How I Stopped Fighting and Learned to Love the Bomb, I think is was the movie. Do you recall this?
Never
Or
watched it. Oh.
someone might know the actual name of it, but basically I um my title was sort of based on something like that. So it was like seeking depths and avoiding drowning.
Ah, nice.
um
Nice.
yeah, and so I'm super super excited to read the book, and kind of see what other people are getting into around their sun sign, and sort of building and working with that kind of energy, um, from
Well,
a
please,
perspective
if it's
of
possible,
craft.
put a link
That
to
I can
that one
put
in
to as
too.
well. Yeah, yeah, I can put a link in for that as well.
That would be great. And maybe just because a lot of people will be coming to the stream cold and just see the comments, maybe even describing what it is
Yeah,
in the it would be a good way to go.
yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, beautiful. I just want to give a maybe 3 minute heads up on ending because
Sure,
we're actually traveling right now. I don't know if you know this. You want to see some cool scenes?
absolutely.
So we're in this place called Mullumbimby in Australia, and it
Oh wow.
is. I'm trying to think um, of a correlation in Nova Scotia. It's interesting because it is a
Beautiful.
combination of spiritual hippie types and lower demographic um, uh, householders, and it has become essentially like a one of the safe zones for people to be able to really just be a freak. It's like it's one of those kind of like Gottingen maybe used to be back
Okay.
in the day. I don't know where it is now, but yeah, it's a very interesting place. And being at the grocery store, I was like, oh my God, it feels like I'm in a festival right now. The way that people would make
I
deep
love
eye
that.
contact as you walk by them in the aisle, I was like, oh my God, I feel like, yeah, it feels like I'm in like a love fest right now or
That's
something.
amazing.
Uh, yeah, it is. It's really cool. We're just dealing with our little girl has a bit of a sickness about her, a little bit of a
Yeah.
fever happening too. And it's funny, the issue here is not, oh no, it's too cold. It's starting to become, oh fuck, it's too hot. And
Yeah.
that is like a very interesting challenge here because when it gets hot, it gets hot.
Right.
So that's what we're just dealing with here. But anyways, the actual space itself is beautiful. The
It looks
foliage
gorgeous.
and yeah, it's very interesting being in a place that's got that
Yeah.
tropical feel about it. So,
Yeah.
anyways, the point of that is we are on a travel trip, and we've been on the road for about a week, and we'll be on the road for about another week and a half more before we get into a cool camping spot. So I'm gonna have to go back and just do all the things, all the fatherly duties,
Right.
to make sure that things are all flowing smoothly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And again, thank you so much for coming on, Lisa.
Thank you.
Love hearing love hearing about the projects that you're doing. I love your in-depth understanding of astrology and how to describe these things also in layman's terms so that people can catch on to how it might affect them directly.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you've been an activist. You were an activist before it was cool. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Yeah.
So I know that those movements mean a lot, and the way that you hold your presence in those movements means a lot. So thank you for that as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. Like Josh, your live streams are really putting a lot of value added in in a space where there's not a lot of value added.
I know, I
So I
know.
really
Part of me is like,
appreciate your presence.
should I just get off this Facebook? And then every time I'm like, oh no, I'll just keep going for a little bit more anyway.
Yeah, yeah, you're adding value in a space where it doesn't otherwise exist. So
Thank you.
I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Lisa. And again, there might be a point where we all have to move over to a different platform.
Yeah,
If that's the thing, I'm open to it. I just haven't found one that really hits the mark quite yet.
yeah, 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 it'll come.
Well, I love you. Thank you so much for coming on.
I love you
And
too. I
looking
received that.
looking forward to the next one. And who knows, maybe it'll be next month, maybe it'll be next year. That's
Yeah,
the fun
I'd
part of
love to chat and
oh,
jam with you again.
absolutely. We
Yeah.
definitely will do that.
All right.
Okay.
Bye
We'll talk
everyone.
to you. Thank you.